Last year, I released a video on what I consider to be the best piece of Scooby-Doo media ever released, be it TV show, movie, whatever. But Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island is simply the best thing to ever come from the franchise. A direct-to-video movie, Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island, took the tired formula and revamped it, bringing it to a more modern setting and making the monsters real. It was an unexpected success and completely revitalized the series. However, even though the film's follow-up, Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost, would only come out 1 year later, I never saw it. I'm not sure what happened. I think I may have just fallen out of my Scooby-Doo fandom by that point, but I never saw another Scooby-Doo project after Zombie Island. When I released my video, however, I had a lot of people ask me to do more videos on the Scooby-Doo movies that came after, and was even told that they were just as good as Zombie Island. Now, I have my reservations, because Zombie Island is just that good, but today I figured we could take a look at the next in the line of Scooby-Doo direct-to-video movies with Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost. Released on October 5th, 1999, Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost brings Mystery Inc. to the small town of Oak Haven, New England, where the ghost of a persecuted witch attempts to get revenge on the world that turned its back on her. Like in Zombie Island, Witch's Ghost starts with Mystery Inc. already on a case, this time taking place inside a museum. It would be pretty awesome if those dinosaur bones came to life. How does the curator not notice a dog wearing a saber-toothed tiger costume? Instead of dinosaurs though, we get some ancient mummy warriors, which aren't as spooky as the Gillman on steroids from Zombie Island. Of course, this all leads to a classic Scooby-Doo chase with the theme song being sung by Billy Ray Cyrus.
Scooby-Dooby-Doo, where are you?
The Billy Ray Cyrus version is kinda strange and I'm not really sure it fits. The gang kinda sorta saves the day, but it's really some strange guy named Ben Ravencroft who just happened to be there.
You're Ben Ravencroft, the famous horror writer.
That's right.
A horror writer named Ravencroft? Anyways, the men pretending to be the mummy are a couple butthurt archaeologists, but what I need to ask is, why are there so many people in the Scooby-Doo universe that decide the best way to get revenge on someone is dressing up like a monster and scaring them? There's gotta be a better way of doing it. Anyways, Ravencroft, who Velma seems to be a big fan of, reveals he's also a fan of Mystery Inc.'s and invites them back to his small town of Oak Haven, Massachusetts. So we have a horror writer named Ravencroft, which kinda sounds like a combination of Lovecraft, and Edgar Allan Poe's the Raven, who's voiced by Tim Curry, who's a horror writer from New England, just like Stephen King, and who looks like David Xanatos from Gargoyles. This guy's the villain, isn't he? Look, you're not hiring Tim Curry if he's not the bad guy.
This is a circus. Oh, there's the mayor. He'll know what's going on.
Yeah, how dare people come to my small town? Don't they know who I am? It turns out people are showing up in droves for a concert featuring the Hex Girls, and a ghost witch who just so happens to be the ancestor of Ravencroft. This witch started coming about once the town built its Puritan village that recreates what life was like in the 1600s. You know, I've been to similar attractions when I was a kid, and they didn't exactly draw big crowds. It was more so something you were forced to go to when you were in school, but it was better than sitting in class. So no one finds it weird that this dog can talk and pretend to play the guitar while churning butter? Ben Ravencroft takes it pretty personally when the mayor starts running his mouth about Ravencroft's witchy ancestor Sarah. I'm not sure why he's getting so worked up. It's not like he actually knew her. Scooby-Doo does a little digging and finds what the mayor claims is a shoe buckle, and I'm sure that's all it is. The mayor claims they found lots of neat doodads when building this little village, but all Ravencroft is interested in is a book that he claims will clear the name of Sarah Ravencroft, his ancestor. The gang splits up so Scooby and Shaggy can go eat, while the others follow Ravencroft back to his studio.
Well, boys, are you hungry?
Is it just me, or does he sort of sound like the guy that sings the SpongeBob theme?
Are you ready, kids? Well, boys, are you hungry?
Anyways, at Ravencroft's studio, he just so happens to have a painting of Sarah, which means flashback time. Sarah was a Wiccan and a healer, and believed this oak tree had magical powers. I think she was just high off all the weed she used for her patients. Hey, it's Charizard. I think Ravencroft underestimated how much Scooby and Shaggy could eat when he said he'd cover their bill.
Come on, we've been waiting here an hour. The ghost is a no-show.
Maybe she'll show up at the concert tomorrow.
That's a great idea. Ghost witches love concerts.
Boy, Ben seems to be pretty obsessed with that book.
And his ancestor. Scooby and Shaggy finally finish eating when they see some mysterious ladies walking down a creepy alleyway.
Hi, girls.
Don't worry guys, I have the same reaction anytime vampire women try to talk to me too. Wait, vampires? I thought this was about a ghost witch. Oh, there's the ghost witch. Scooby and Shaggy run into the others, but somehow Fred is sitting on Daphne, when seconds earlier she was nowhere to be found. Now that's spooky. Scooby and Shaggy show the others where the witch chased them, and they all notice the trees are cut at the very top in a perfectly straight line. Maybe the witch's day job is an arborist. Some spooky lights off in the distance catch their attention, so of course they need to investigate. And I'm gonna guess this movie awakens something in many kids that watch this growing up.
I'm a Hex Girl, and I'm gonna put a spell on you. Put a spell on you.
Apparently not only the kids, but Fred too. I thought he and Daphne were supposed to be a thing. The vampire girls that Scooby and Shaggy ran into earlier are actually the Hex Girls, the band that's going to be playing at the town's Autumn Fest. These three ladies are named Thorn, Dusk, and Luna, because you have to have gothy sounding names if you want to be in a goth band.
We're eco-goths.
Eco-goths?
Eco-goths is one of the funniest things I've ever heard. It just sounds so 90s. It reminds me of Jenny from Buffy the Vampire Slayer who calls herself a techno-pagan. Can we bring back fun cheesy names like this in 2025?
Daff and I should keep an eye on him.
Gee, why is it that you always pair off with Daphne, Fred?
Finally, someone is calling Fred out. Both Fred and Velma think the Hex Girls are kinda suspicious, but that just sounds like profiling to me. Oh what, because they're goth, that means they're up to no good? They just said they're all for saving the planet. The group splits up so Fred and Daphne can keep an eye on the Hex Girls and obviously nothing else, while the others get back on the trail of that darn ghost. They discover some tracks in the woods which leads them to a barn where the mayor is acting very strange. Now there's no way he'd get involved. Why would he want to create a fake ghost witch that helps bring in tourists and more importantly, tourist money into his small town? That just sounds like crazy conspiracy talk. While Velma and Ravencroft check out the barn, Scooby and Shaggy follow the mayor.
So, Freddy, why do you always pair us up?
Does she really not know? It doesn't matter anyways because their little love fest gets broken up by the Hex Girls. These spooky gals appear to be up to some kind of ritual, so Fred figures they should follow Thorn because she appears to be the leader. I'm sure it has nothing to do with the fact he thinks she's hot.
Ah, young love.
Wait, were Shaggy and Scooby just making out? Anyways, they follow the mayor inside another barn of some kind and find the spooky witch. But no sign of the mayor, except they run into him as they flee down the street, so just how fast is this guy? Everyone catches back up with each other, including the mayor, and Velma tells him she's very close to solving the case. She just needs to check up on one more thing.
I'll do anything I can to help.
I love how he says he'll do anything to help and then proceeds to walk away. So much for his help, I guess. Mystery Inc. enlists the help of the Hex Girls to set some kind of trap, and immediately the witch is on the offensive throwing fireballs. She must keep rolling a 1 though because she keeps missing every time. You know, that was kind of a simple trap. The ghost turns out to be the pharmacist who was trying to sell witch t-shirts earlier, and who also just so happens to be the father of Thorn, or Sally, which is her real name and not very goth. Velma then hilariously reveals the entire ghost witch scam, which pretty much involves the entire town. I guess those sweet tourist dollars were really worth scaring the hell out of everyone. I can't exactly blame them, and I'm not sure why everyone is coming down so hard on them. So they made up a fake witch ghost. It's not like anyone got hurt. Plus it pulled in tons of tourists, which is only a good thing for everyone. Although maybe not for some of the locals who preferred their small, quiet town staying quiet.
She's beautiful.
Yes, I think so too.
This guy is way too into his ancestor.
Witches? We just pretend that stuff. It's just a gimmick for our band.
I knew it, they're posers. Their fangs aren't even real. The mayor comes in to apologize for using Ravencroft's ancestor as some touristy gimmick, but even more so for accidentally digging up her grave. That's quite the oopsie. Well, grave marker anyways, no bones were actually found. Remember that buckle Scooby found earlier? Well, it turns out to be a part of the book Ravencroft has been so desperate to find. So Scooby takes everyone back to the spot where he found it. Oh my god, it's the Necronomicon!
She was indeed a witch.
See, I knew it, Ben's the villain. His ancestor Sarah is trapped in the book and he plans on getting her out. He then explains his elaborate plan for getting Mystery Inc. involved. But were they really necessary in finding the book? Yeah, Scooby brought them to the right spot, but he probably would have found it on his own if he just tried searching. Ben spends a few solid minutes talking about how powerful the book is and how he's going to unlock its power and release Sarah. But while he's jabbering, why don't they tackle him? Fred looks to be in pretty good shape. Just run up and take him out before he can cast any spells. Oh no, he's been watching too much Elon Musk. Ben casts his little spell, which gives him an untold amount of power, but again, they had so much time to stop him.
Now, guys, grab the book!
Yes, grab the book after he already cast his spell. I think it's a little too late for that, Velma. Scooby and Shaggy could have ended this whole thing right then and there if they had just plowed into this guy. I know it's a kid's movie, but I'm just saying. Scooby manages to pry the book from Ben's hands, but he still has his powers, which seems to include extreme gymnastics. Ben gets the book and finally summons Sarah.
I could never have imagined such an imposing creature.
Thank thee.
Bro, seriously, take it down a notch. You're related. What's funny is Ben spent all this time bringing her back, only for Sarah to talk down to him like he's nothing. As Sarah's first act of vengeance, she releases a deadly fart cloud that kills everything it touches. Seriously, what else is this supposed to be? Ben tries sending Sarah back into the book, but unfortunately, one has to be a Wiccan in order to do so. And unfortunately, there aren't any Wiccans around. Unless...
Kinda like Wiccans. Just ask Thorn, she is one.
It's very lucky that Thorn happens to be 1/16th Wiccan, but she's a little tied up at the moment. For being a powerful witch, her magic is kind of lame. She mostly just creates pumpkin monsters and giant turkeys. Ben's magic actually seemed more devastating, and she's supposed to be the stronger one. While Scooby and Shaggy distract Sarah with the book, the others free the Hex Girls. Although for being goth girls, they sure waste no time running away from a spooky witch. They get the book into Thorn's hands, who reads the spell, sending Sarah back to her pulpy prison. The best part is when she grabs Ben and pulls him in with her, and then a flaming tree branch falls on the book, making sure there is no sequel. Since Ben was this famed horror writer, it's gonna be kinda difficult to explain how he just up and vanished. I'm not gonna lie, but it was really hard for me to sit and watch Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost and not compare it to Zombie Island. And well, how does the Witch's Ghost stack up to it? Pretty well, all things considered. The thing I noticed though was how toned down everything was when compared to its predecessor, and this seemed to be on purpose. Due to the success of Zombie Island, WB, who really didn't care about the project, wanted to get more involved with its sequel pretty much so they could get more credit for it. Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island was basically a passion project. The studio let the writers and animators go and do what they wanted with very little, if any, insight. And because of this, the creative juices were allowed to flow. However, for The Witch's Ghost, there was much more meddling from the studio. First, they brought in a couple new writers, Rick Kopp and David A. Goodman, which insulted the team that had put their hearts into the previous entry. The reason for bringing in new writers was simply because the studio wanted some more prestigious talent. Both Rick Kopp and David A. Goodman had worked on live-action shows and movies like an episode of The Golden Girls and the Brady Bunch movie, and for some reason, in the studio's eyes, this meant they would bring more to the project than the people that made Zombie Island a success in the first place. This did not sit well with the team, and what ended up happening was writers Glenn Leopold and Davis Doy, who wrote Zombie Island, had to rewrite the entire last third of Witch's Ghost, because it just ended in typical Scooby-Doo fashion with the ghost being revealed to be a hoax. The entire section of the movie around the 38-minute mark was basically the original intended ending. The Ghost Witch was going to be revealed to be fake, with the entire town in on it so they can scam tourists. Leopold and Doy hated this because it was a departure from what they did with Zombie Island, so they changed it to the ghost actually being real and placed the original ending around the halfway mark. Another thing WB did was force the animators / writers and producers to tone down the dark content of the film. Witch's Ghost was supposed to be darker like Zombie Island, but for whatever reason they felt it would be just too dark for their intended audience. I really want to know just what the hell goes on in studio executives' heads. Do they really think kids can't handle scary movies? Now, I'm not about to sit down a toddler in front of Friday the 13th, but there is nothing in Zombie Island that I would consider to be too scary for kids. Maybe just make the movie how you want and let parents decide if it's too much for their children. All these moral arbiters that work at these studios do is water things down until it's a lesser version of what it could have been. And honestly, I do feel like it impacted Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost. The movie really does feel toned down and less scary. There aren't very many monsters, and the ones that are present are done so with less detail and lighter colors. They don't look bad, but there's a flatness to them that makes them look less threatening. The fake witch looks okay, but Sarah doesn't look even remotely spooky. There are shots where she has these big, thick black lines around her face that make her look very cartoony. Now compare that to some of the zombies or werecats in Zombie Island, and it's night and day. I don't think this toned down look is just with the characters either. The backgrounds and setting also feels lighter. Moonscar Island is a much creepier setting, being out in the bayous of Louisiana when compared to something like Oak Haven, which has a much lighter small town feeling. There's nothing wrong with a small town during the fall, but the backgrounds don't look nearly as dark. The animation for the most part does feel similar to Zombie Island, though the whole time I was watching it, it felt cheaper to me. When I checked out the budget for the film, I was shocked to see it had $15 million when compared to Zombie Island's $10 million, yet Witch's Ghost is more than 10 minutes shorter and feels a bit more rushed. The story for the most part is fine, but doesn't really feel like it gets going until the last 15 minutes. Like I mentioned earlier, there isn't much monster action in this one, with only the brief part with the mummies at the beginning, some random encounters with the fake witch, and then the last 15 minutes or so when everything ramps up. Compare this to Zombie Island that had the opening monster, a montage of the gang solving various cases, and then all the zombie and ghost stuff that takes place throughout before we even get to the finale. I have a feeling this goes back to the lighter tone they were trying to achieve by simply just having less monsters. Likely the biggest takeaway from The Witch's Ghost though are the Hex Girls. I can't say I know much of these characters, but I know they've got something of a following. I'm actually kinda surprised they were never spun off into their own series, because it feels like they would have been perfect for it. You could easily turn them into a goth Josie and the Pussycats and have them tour around playing music and dealing with spooky monsters. Speaking of the Hex Girls, the music in this is pretty good. I'm not really a fan of Billy Ray Cyrus's cover of the Scooby-Doo theme, but the Hex Girl songs are pretty catchy for what they are. Now, Hex Girl and Earth, Wind, Fire, and Air aren't It's Terror Time Again, but I mean, what is?
And I'm gonna put a spell on you. I'm gonna put a spell on you.
And it's terror time again.
Still though, they're pretty entertaining and probably too good for a simple direct-to-video children's cartoon. It might seem like I didn't like this movie, or maybe I was a little harsh on it, but I did enjoy it. I think it's one of those things where if you saw it when you were a kid, you'd have a greater appreciation for it. Unfortunately, I'm an old cynical man and I was hoping for more. If Zombie Island is a 10 out of 10 for Scooby-Doo, then The Witch's Ghost is a solid 8. It's not as good as Zombie Island, but I think it does enough to stand on its own and would make for a fun marathon with Zombie Island and the Scooby-Doo project. But what about you? I know this one has a lot of fans, so let me know what you think of it down in the comments. I can't wait to see what you guys have to say. Anyways, that's all from me today. I hope you're having a great day and stay spooky.
Coming this fall, mysteries as old as mankind, witchcraft, ghosts, talking dogs.
Wrong? Where?
Coming to video fall 1999. It's the all-new, fully animated movie, Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost.